James was sipping his morning coffee when his phone buzzed with a message that would shatter his world. It was an anonymous text, the kind that promised nothing but trouble. He opened it, his heart pounding in his chest. The message contained a picture of his wife, Lisa, entering a local hotel with a man he didn't recognize. The caption read, "This isn't the first time." His mind raced, a storm of suspicion and anger swirling within him. Could it be true? Was Lisa really cheating on him? The thought was like a dagger to his heart. He couldn't sit still. He needed answers. James paced their modest living room, the picture still open on his phone. The room felt smaller, suffocating. He grabbed his jacket and headed out to meet his best friend, Mark. If anyone could help him make sense of this, it was Mark. At the local diner, James slid into the booth across from Mark, his face a mask of turmoil. "I got this today," he said, handing his phone over. Mark studied the image, his expression shifting from curiosity to concern. "That's not good," he said slowly, handing the phone back. "But you need more than just this before you do anything rash." James nodded, though his insides were boiling. "I know, but the message said it's not the first time. What if she's been lying to me for months?" "Calm down, James. You need to gather more evidence. If this is real, you need to know the whole story before you confront her. Otherwise, she'll just deny it." James clenched his fists, his mind a whirl of disbelief and fury. Lisa had been distant lately, but he'd chalked it up to her job. She often complained about the stress, the long hours. Was that all a cover for her affair? "You think I should follow her?" James asked, his voice low with determination. Mark nodded. "It's the only way to be sure. Find out when she's going there again. Then you'll know for sure." James left the diner with a plan forming in his mind. He would find out the truth, no matter how painful it might be. He wouldn't rest until he had answers. And if Lisa was cheating, there would be consequences she couldn't escape. James sat in his car, parked inconspicuously across the street from the mid-range hotel. The building was unassuming, its exterior blending into the urban landscape with a muted elegance that suggested discretion. It was the kind of place where secrets were kept, where people went to disappear for a few hours. He had called in sick to work, his mind too consumed with thoughts of betrayal to focus on anything else. His eyes were fixed on the hotel entrance, every nerve in his body taut with anticipation. The morning dragged on, the minutes stretching into an agonizing eternity. Finally, his patience was rewarded. He saw Lisa approaching, her hair pulled back in a way she only did when she was meeting someone important. She walked with a man who was tall, with an air of confidence that made James's blood boil. They laughed at something he said, the sound carrying across the street like a taunt. James gripped the steering wheel so hard his knuckles turned white. His suspicions were confirmed. This was no innocent meeting. He watched as they entered the hotel, the door closing behind them with a finality that echoed in his heart. He needed more than just his eyes on them. He needed evidence. He took a deep breath, trying to quell the rage simmering beneath his skin, and stepped out of the car. His legs felt heavy as he crossed the street, each step bringing him closer to the truth he dreaded to uncover. Inside, the hotel lobby was a study in understated luxury. The receptionist, a woman with a practiced smile and eyes that missed nothing, looked up as he approached. James forced a casual demeanor, though his insides churned with anger and betrayal. "I'm interested in booking a room," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil within. "Of course, sir," she replied, her fingers poised over the keyboard. "Are you looking for a specific date?" James leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "Actually, I have a bit of a strange request. My wife's been here a few times recently, and she mentioned some kind of loyalty program. I wanted to surprise her, maybe book the same room she stayed in." The receptionist hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty crossing her face. James could almost see the gears turning in her mind as she weighed the privacy of her guests against his seemingly innocent request. "I'm afraid I can't disclose specific guest information," she said, her tone apologetic but firm. James nodded, feigning understanding as he tried another angle. "I get it. It's just, she's been under a lot of stress lately, and I thought maybe recreating a weekend she enjoyed would help. I just want to make it special for her." The receptionist's expression softened, her professional demeanor giving way to a touch of sympathy. Well, if she's part of our loyalty program, I can tell you that she's been here a few times, yes, but I really can't give out more than that. James forced a smile, though inside he was seething. Her confirmation was like a punch to the gut. That's helpful, thank you. I'll figure something out. Maybe I'll just book a nice room and hope for the best. He turned away, his mind racing. Lisa had been here regularly, using a loyalty program he knew nothing about. The betrayal cut deeper than he'd imagined, each revelation twisting the knife further. Back in his car, James sat in silence, the weight of the truth settling over him like a shroud. His phone buzzed with a message from Mark. Any news? James typed back quickly, his fingers trembling with anger. She's been here more than once. Loyalty program. It's true. The reply came almost instantly. What now? James stared at the hotel, its facade mocking him with its normalcy. I confront her. Tonight. He drove home, the journey a blur as his thoughts churned. He would gather everything he had, confront her with the evidence, and finally hear her side of the story. But deep down, he knew there was no explanation that could mend the breach her betrayal had caused. As he entered their home, the familiar surroundings felt alien, tainted by the knowledge of Lisa's infidelity. He sat at the kitchen table, his jaw clenched as he waited for her to come home, the minutes dragging by with agonizing slowness. When Lisa finally walked through the door, she seemed oblivious to the storm brewing in her husband's eyes. She smiled, setting her purse down on the counter. Hey, how was your day? James stood, his expression hard as stone. We need to talk. Lisa's smile faltered, confusion clouding her features. What's wrong? Where were you today, he asked, his voice tight with barely restrained fury. She hesitated, a flicker of something guilt crossing her face. I told you, I had meetings. Don't lie to me, Lisa, he snapped, his anger finally breaking through. I know about the hotel. I know about the loyalty program. I saw you with him. Her face blanched, the color draining from her cheeks as realization dawned. James, Save it, he interrupted, his voice cold. I want to hear the truth. All of it. Lisa opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. The silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of her betrayal. James stood in the center of their living room, the air between him and Lisa crackling with tension. The room, once a place of warmth and comfort, now felt like a battlefield. The evidence he had gathered lay spread across the coffee table, hotel records, photos, and a printout of the loyalty program details. Lisa's eyes darted to the incriminating pile, her face a mask of disbelief and fear. James, I can explain, she began, her voice trembling. Explain, James's voice was sharp, cutting through her feeble attempt at justification. Explain how you've been sneaking around behind my back, how you've lied to me over and over again. She took a step towards him, her hands up as if to ward off his anger. It wasn't like that. I never meant to hurt you. James laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. You never meant to hurt me. Then what did you mean, Lisa? Because from where I'm standing, it looks a hell of a lot like betrayal. Lisa flinched, her composure slipping. I felt neglected, James. You've been working late, and with the financial stress, I felt like I was losing you. So this is my fault, James's eyes blazed with anger. You're blaming me for your affair. No, she faltered, tears welling in her eyes. I needed someone to talk to. Someone who was there. James shook his head, his jaw clenched tight. You needed someone to talk to, so you went to him? You think that's a good enough excuse? It wasn't just about that, Lisa insisted, her voice rising in desperation. I was scared, James. Scared of losing everything, of losing us. Well, congratulations, he snapped, his voice dripping with sarcasm. You've managed to do just that. Lisa reached for him, but he stepped back, his anger a palpable barrier between them. James, please. I love you. I never stopped loving you. Love, the word was an accusation, a challenge. You don't do this to someone you love. You don't destroy everything we've built together. Tears streamed down her face, but James's resolve was unyielding. He turned away, unable to look at her any longer. The silence stretched, broken only by Lisa's quiet sobs. Finally, James spoke, his voice cold and distant. "I want you out, Lisa, tonight." She gasped, her eyes wide with shock. "James, no, we can work through this, please." But James was unmoved. "I can't live with someone I can't trust. I won't." Lisa's shoulders slumped, defeat written in every line of her body. "Where will I go?" "That's not my problem," James replied, his tone final. "Figure it out." He walked past her, his heart a storm of conflicting emotions. As he reached the door, he paused, his back to her. "I hope it was worth it, Lisa. I really do." With that, he left the room, the sound of the door closing behind him echoing in the silence. James's footsteps echoed in the hallway as he left the apartment, his mind a whirlwind of anger and betrayal. He needed space, air, anything to clear his head. The confrontation with Lisa had been brutal, but necessary. He had given her the chance to explain, and her excuses had only fueled his resolve. He found himself at a nearby park, the quiet serenity a stark contrast to the chaos in his heart. He sat on a bench, staring out at nothing in particular, his thoughts racing. His phone buzzed in his pocket, pulling him back to reality. It was a message from his lawyer. "James, everything is ready. Come by the office when you can." James stood, the decision already made. He walked briskly to his car, the engine roaring to life as he headed to his lawyer's office. The drive was short, but it felt like a lifetime. Each red light, each stop sign, was another moment lost in a life he no longer recognized. The law office was a nondescript building, its interior a maze of beige walls and soft lighting designed to put clients at ease. James didn't want ease. He wanted action. He wanted resolution. His lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Claire, greeted him with a firm handshake. "James, I've got everything prepared for you," she said, leading him to a conference room. James sat across from her, the table between them laden with documents. "I want this done as quickly as possible," he said, his voice carrying the weight of his determination. Claire nodded, her expression professional yet sympathetic. "We filed for divorce on grounds of infidelity. Given the evidence you've provided, it's unlikely she'll contest it. You'll come out of this with minimal financial impact." James felt a grim satisfaction at her words. Lisa's betrayal would not cost him more than it already had, and the house he asked, needing to hear it confirmed. "It's yours," Claire assured him. "Given her actions, she has little claim to it. You'll be able to move forward without her." James nodded, his relief tempered by the bitterness of the situation. "Good. I want to make sure she doesn't get anything more than she deserves." Claire slid a pen across the table. "Sign here, and we'll proceed with filing. She'll be served within the week." James took the pen, his hand steady as he signed his name. Each stroke of the pen felt like a step towards reclaiming his life, towards a future free of lies. As he handed the documents back to Claire, his phone buzzed again. It was a message from Lisa. He hesitated, then opened it. "James, please talk to me. We can fix this. I was wrong, but I love you." Anger flared in his chest, but he tamped it down, his resolve firm. He typed a quick reply, his fingers moving with purpose. "It's too late, Lisa. I've already started the divorce process. You need to find somewhere else to stay." He hit send, the finality of the message echoing in his mind. There was no going back now. He had made his choice, and he would see it through. Claire watched him, her expression unreadable. "Do you need anything else, James?" He shook his head, standing to leave. "No, thank you, Claire. I appreciate your help." She nodded, her professionalism unwavering. "Call me if you need anything further." James left the office, the weight of his decision settling over him like a mantle. He had taken the first step towards a new life, one where he could rebuild without the shadow of betrayal hanging over him. As he drove home, his phone buzzed again. Another message from Lisa, but this time he didn't open it. He knew what it would say, and he didn't need to read it to know that his decision was the right one. The house was quiet when he returned, the silence a welcome relief. He walked through the rooms, each one a reminder of the life he had shared with Lisa. But now, they were his alone. He paused in the living room, his gaze falling on the coffee table where the evidence had lain. It was gone now, replaced by the stark reality of his new life. He took a deep breath, feeling the anger and betrayal slowly give way to a sense of determination. James knew the road ahead would be difficult, but he was ready to face it. He had taken the first step, and he would keep moving forward, one day at a time. James's mind was a tumult of emotions as he left the lawyer's office, but his resolve was unshakable. The next step in his plan was crucial, and he knew exactly where he needed to go. He drove straight to the bank, determined to protect his assets from any further damage Lisa might cause. The bank was quiet, the kind of quiet that seemed to amplify every sound, from the click of computer keys to the low murmur of conversations. James approached the manager's desk, his expression set with determination. "Mr. Thompson, how can I help you today?" the manager, a middle-aged man with a genial smile, asked as James sat down. "I need to make some changes to my accounts," James replied, his voice steady but firm. "Effective immediately." The manager nodded, his demeanor professional. "Of course. What kind of changes are we talking about?" James leaned forward, his eyes locked onto the manager's. "I need to freeze all joint accounts and transfer the funds to an account under my name only. Also, I need to ensure that any assets tied to those accounts are secured in my sole ownership." The manager's eyebrows rose slightly, but he nodded. "I understand. We'll need to go through some paperwork, but it can be done." As they worked through the forms, James felt a sense of control returning. Each signature was a step further away from Lisa's betrayal, a step closer to securing his own future. The manager was efficient, guiding him through the process with practiced ease. Halfway through, James's phone buzzed again. He glanced at it, expecting another message from Lisa, but it was Mark. He hesitated, then answered. "Hey, what's up?" James asked, keeping his voice low. "Just checking in," Mark replied, his tone cautious. "How's everything going?" James glanced at the manager, who was focused on the documents. "I'm at the bank, sorting things out. It's going as well as it can." "Good," Mark said, his relief evident. "Just remember, you've got people who've got your back." James nodded, though Mark couldn't see it. "Thanks, man, I appreciate it." He ended the call, refocusing on the task at hand. The manager handed him the final document, and James signed it with a flourish. It was done. The accounts were secure, and Lisa would find herself cut off from the financial safety net she'd taken for granted. "Everything is set," the manager said, standing to shake James's hand. "If there's anything else you need, don't hesitate to ask." James nodded, shaking the manager's hand firmly. "Thank you. This means a lot." As he left the bank, a new sense of purpose filled him. He had taken decisive action, and the consequences of Lisa's betrayal were now hers to face alone. His phone buzzed again, and this time he didn't ignore it. He opened the message, expecting more pleas from Lisa, but what he saw made him stop in his tracks. It was a message from an unknown number, with a photo attached. The photo showed Lisa's affair partner, the same man from the hotel, but this time he was with another woman, laughing and holding her close. The caption read, "Guess he's moved on." James stared at the image, a mix of emotions swirling within him. Anger, betrayal, and a bitter sense of vindication. Lisa had been used, just as she had used him. He saved the photo, knowing it might be useful later. His phone buzzed again, another message from the same unknown number. "He's been with her for months. Thought you should know." James's mind raced. Who was sending these messages? And why now? He typed a quick reply. "Who is this?" The response was immediate. "A friend. Let's just say I don't like seeing people get screwed over." James pocketed his phone, his mind a whirl of questions. He would have to deal with this new information later. For now, he had more immediate concerns. He drove home, his thoughts a chaotic mix of anger and determination. When he arrived, the house was quiet, but he knew Lisa was still there. He found her in the living room, a suitcase by her side, her eyes red from crying. "James, please," she began, but he held up a hand, stopping her. "I've frozen the accounts," he said, his voice cold and unyielding. "You won't be able to access any of our funds." Her face crumpled, the reality of her situation hitting her full force. "You can't do this to me." "I can and I have," James replied, his anger simmering beneath the surface. "You made your choices, Lisa. Now you have to live with them." She looked at him, desperation in her eyes. "I have nothing, James. Nowhere to go." He crossed his arms, unmoved. "That's not my problem. You should have thought of that before you decided to betray me." Lisa's shoulders slumped, defeat written across her features. "I'm sorry," she whispered, but James turned away, unwilling to hear her apologies. "Save it," he said, his voice hard. "Just pack your things and go." As he left the room, the sound of Lisa's quiet sobs followed him, but he didn't look back. He had taken control of his life, and there was no turning back now. James stood in the kitchen, staring blankly at the coffee machine as it gurgled to life. The morning sun streamed through the window, casting a warm glow over the room that felt at odds with the turmoil inside him. The events of the past few days played over and over in his mind, each memory a fresh sting. As he poured himself a cup, the doorbell rang, its chime echoing through the house. He set his mug down and walked to the door, his steps heavy with apprehension. When he opened it, he found Mark standing there, a look of concern etched on his face. "Hey, thought you might need some company," Mark said, holding up a bag of pastries as a peace offering. James managed a small smile, stepping aside to let his friend in. "Thanks. I could use the distraction." They settled in the living room, the pastries untouched as James recounted the latest developments. Mark listened intently, nodding occasionally, his brow furrowed in thought. "So she's out?" Mark asked, his tone cautious. "Yeah," James replied, his voice flat. "She's staying with a friend, I think. I don't really care at this point." Mark leaned back, crossing his arms. "And the accounts? Everything's secure." James nodded, taking a sip of his coffee. "All taken care of. She won't get another dime from me." Mark let out a low whistle, shaking his head. "I still can't believe she did this to you, man. You didn't deserve any of it." James's jaw tightened, the anger simmering just beneath the surface. "I know, but I can't focus on that. I need to move forward." Mark studied him for a moment, then leaned forward, his expression serious. "There's something else you should know. I heard from a mutual friend that Lisa's affair partner has been seeing someone else. Apparently he's been stringing her along the whole time." James felt a flicker of satisfaction, though it was tinged with bitterness. "I got a message about that yesterday, some anonymous tip." Mark raised an eyebrow. "Anonymous? That's odd. You think someone's trying to help you out?" "Maybe," James replied, setting his mug down with a clatter. "Or maybe they just want to stir the pot. Either way, it doesn't change anything." Mark nodded, accepting the explanation. "So, what's next for you?" James took a deep breath, considering his answer. "I focus on work. I've got a promotion in the works, and I need to be at the top of my game. And maybe I start looking for a new place, something that isn't full of memories." Mark smiled, a genuine warmth in his eyes. "That sounds like a plan. You've got a clean slate, James. Use it." James nodded, feeling a sense of resolve settle over him. He would rebuild, piece by piece, until he was whole again. The conversation shifted to lighter topics, and for a while James was able to forget the chaos of his personal life. But as Mark got up to leave, his expression turned serious once more. "Hey, if you need anything, you know where to find me," Mark said, clapping a hand on James's shoulder. James nodded, grateful for his friend's unwavering support. "Thanks, Mark. I appreciate it." After Mark left, the house felt quiet again, but this time the silence was less oppressive. James sat back down, picking up his phone to check his messages. There was one from his boss, confirming a meeting about the promotion. He replied quickly, setting up a time for later in the week. As he put his phone down, he noticed another message from the unknown number. Hesitant, he opened it. "Just wanted to make sure you're okay. You deserve better than what she gave you." James stared at the message, a mix of emotions swirling within him. Whoever this person was, they seemed to genuinely care about his well-being. He typed a quick response, his curiosity getting the better of him. "Who are you? Why are you helping me?" The reply came almost instantly. "Just someone who's been in your shoes. Hang in there, James." James set his phone down, a strange sense of comfort washing over him. He didn't know who this person was, but their words resonated with him. He would hang in there. He would move forward, no matter what. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of the door opening. Lisa stood there, her eyes red and puffy, a look of desperation on her face. "James, please." "I need to talk to you," she said, her voice trembling. James felt a surge of anger, but he forced himself to remain calm. "What is it, Lisa?" She stepped inside, wringing her hands together. "I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. But I need you to understand, I never meant for any of this to happen." James crossed his arms, his expression hard. "You made your choices, Lisa, and now you have to live with them." Tears welled up in her eyes, but he remained unmoved. "I'm sorry, James. I really am. I don't know what to do." He shook his head, his voice cold. "That's not my problem anymore. You need to figure it out on your own." She looked at him, her eyes pleading, but he turned away, unwilling to be swayed by her tears. "Please, James, I don't have anyone else." "That's not my fault," he replied, his tone final. "You burned those bridges, not me." Lisa stood there for a moment longer, then turned and walked out, the door closing softly behind her. James let out a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding, his heart a mix of anger and relief. He had said his piece, and now he could finally begin to move on.